Good evening and welcome to 7 Eyewitness News. I'm Samantha Ratt and thank you for joining us tonight. Let's take a look at the major headlines. Communications Minister Jamal Mohammed apologizes for sending a letter to a TV station indicating that they are biased towards the government. The battle between the Reroute Highway Group and the state continues, this time as they protest over tractors being placed on what they say are their lands. Bahamas is now preparing for the arrival of Hurricane Sandy that battered Jamaica, Haiti and Cuba. The debate on the motion of censure against the Attorney General kicks off tomorrow in Parliament by the opposition leader. The government says it is not worried. And in business, the former CL financial director tells the commission he can't remember collecting $21 million for his company. To our top story tonight, I apologize if I have hurt anyone, were just a few words from the verbal apology by Communications Minister Jamal Mohammed after a letter sent to TV6 placed him past the frying pan straight into the fire. Mohammed expressed remorse over his letter sent via email to the head of news at TV6, accusing the station of being biased towards the government. The communications minister stated initially that it was sent in a personal capacity. However, today, when questioned by the media, he said he was sorry and assures that he has nothing but love for the media.
I believe that the media in Trinidad and Tobago has the full support and cooperation of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We viewed freedom of the press and press freedom as a very important aspect of our development here in Trinidad and Tobago. And your best friend in this government is the Minister of Communications. My statement that was sent out to Mr. Kali Prasad, I apologize if I have hurt anyone or done anything to make anyone feel uncomfortable in any way. But rest assured that press freedom is a very, very important part of the operations of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And I would like that we leave it at that, and we'll do what we can to ensure that we have a free press in Trinidad and Tobago.
And in the very same breath, however, he did admit that they may not always agree with what is reported, but the media's rights will never be infringed upon by the government.
We may not agree with what you print or what you publish, but we will give our lives to ensure that you have the freedom to print and publish what you would like to do.
To some more news now, Bahamas is now preparing for the arrival of the violent Hurricane Sandy that battered Jamaica, Haiti and Cuba. Many homes were either damaged or destroyed in every island affected thus far. And also, the United States government forecasters have issued warnings that much of the East Coast could get swept by Sandy with flooding, heavy rains and high winds beginning with Florida. The BBC has coverage on the effects of Sandy thus far.
Hurricane Sandy tore through the eastern part of Cuba during the night, crossing the entire region while hardly losing any of its intensity, as usually happens when such storms cross over land. Towns and villages were lashed by torrential rains, roofs were ripped off and crops faced potentially serious damage, with winds at a maximum sustained speed of around 170 kilometers an hour after the hurricane's landfall on the southeast coast. Several thousand tourists and larger numbers of residents were moved out of harm's way, while others rode out the storm as best they could.
It's a usual thing here in the Caribbean, right? Storms, and so we're handling it okay. We're okay with the situation now.
But at this evacuation centre, some people who found themselves in the hurricane's path have needed treatment. As the hurricane moved off northwards towards the Bahamas, daylight revealed large areas of eastern Cuba without power. Water levels were high at this dam. Before Hurricane Sandy hit Cuba, it had battered Jamaica with flash floods and deluges. Power lines down and many forced to take to emergency shelter. An elderly man's reported to have been killed when a boulder crashed into his house.
We still have some concerns lingering for persons who are trapped in the Pedro Keys. And to let you know that these fishermen who were told to evacuate before and refused to do so, they are now trapped in the Pedro Keys. They called for help, which was by that time too late.
Well, Jamaica begins the clearing up and counts the cost of Sandy's impact. With schools staying closed on Thursday, hurricane warnings are now in place for parts of the Bahamas and a tropical storm warning for Florida.
And with United States forecasters stating that Sandy now poses a serious threat to much of the U.S. East Coast, concerns have now been raised as to how this will now affect next week's general elections. Of concern is that by early next week, during final preparations for the presidential election, Sandy could hit an area of New England where Hurricane Irene had caused severe damage last year. Much of the East Coast could get swamped by Sandy with flooding, heavy rains and high winds, beginning with Florida. The hurricane hammered Cuba's second largest city, and now the Bahamas is bracing. There were 3 recorded deaths in Jamaica, Haiti, and the latest in Cuba. Many homes were either damaged or destroyed in every island affected thus far. However, the biggest impact is expected to start tonight and last through Friday. In related news, UWI students at the Mona campus in Jamaica will resume their classes as of tomorrow, Friday 26th. With Jamaica clear of Hurricane Sandy, Minister of Tertiary Education and Skills Training Fazal Karim has indicated that all Trinidad and Tobago students studying at the university and the University of Technology in Jamaica are all safe after Sandy's passage. To some more news now, the fight of the highway reroute movement continues, and this as the movement is now contesting what they call the illegal settling of tractors and police presence on their lands. Social activist Dr. Wayne Kublausing is calling on the Prime Minister to intervene and bring an end to this matter once and for all. Keisha Charles reports.
The battle between the state and the highway reroute group seems to be a never-ending saga. Just a few months ago, the group protested outside the Prime Minister's residence following the demolition of their camp. Now they say tractors are being placed illegally on their private lands, as the government seems determined to go through with the project.
They came last night at 8 o'clock and they began to clear this area and put down their tractors on private lands which belong to members of the highway route movement. They went across the road and they did a similar thing, putting down structures on private land, and they came with their lights, with their dogs, with their ammunition, police support, tents. That is illegal.
Dr. Kublausing says the matter is now before the court, and all he is asking is that the Prime Minister honors her promise.
So that the Prime Minister should know that the matter is before the courts and they ought not to do any work on this segment of the highway. And she should remember that they promised us to do a review of this segment of the highway.
Meanwhile, another member of the reroute group and land law and land surveillance student, Kitana Budhai, lashed out at the government for failing to conduct proper consultations. She says the government does not know the real meaning of sustainable development.
The process of land acquisition in this country, there are a number of things that has to be done before you go on acquiring lands. The simple thing as a public purpose. A public purpose, the definition of a public purpose is something that would benefit the majority, right? If you pass through these communities are already empowered communities, developed communities, big homes, nice structures, and you are going to come into these homes and these areas and destroy all of these homes and all of these properties overnight to bring in something you call sustainable development. Sustainable development does not mean building concrete jungles. Sustainable development also means the development of human beings.
For 7 Eyewitness News, I'm Keisha Charles.
Soon to be on the way, and the announcement was made by Member of Parliament for St. Augustine Prakash Ramada on Wednesday night. The MP was addressing an audience at the Public Transport Service Corporation's launching of buses in the area. For this report is Cindy Raghubar.
Well, it seems as though the long-promised Orapun walkover will be a reality soon. This was assured by leader of the Congress of the People, Prakash Ramada, as he attended a PTSC launching of a bus service in the area on Wednesday night. He said that access to and from the area is a critical issue, and it's unfortunate that persons only have one way in and out of the community. The St. Augustine MP stated that this is an issue that will also be dealt with.
This is a promise for the walkover that we made. And indeed, we've been given fixed dates for that work to have started. And that work is supposed to have started any day now, so that your walkover will be delivered to you. I find it extremely worrisome that we have one way in, one way out, a community of 3,000. We're looking at that to get an entrance into and an exit out of Orapun onto the highway.
Ramada also commended the people of their accomplishment in putting condemned buses back on the roads. He added that this reuse of resources was an impressive achievement.
To hear that you were able to produce these 2 buses out of the graveyard for 1/3 the cost of a new one tells me that finally we have persons in place who care about the resources of this nation, that we get value for the money of the people. So that what you have saved in doing this, you'll be able better to provide in areas that have never hoped or even thought that they could possibly see a bus coming in.
Ramada made mention also to the proposal of a rapid rail project by the last administration. The minister stated that unlike the $25 billion structure, these buses can serve the same purpose and cuts that cost by millions of dollars.
We had to go with rapid rail. You know how many buses we could have bought in Trinidad and Tobago? I'd put it at $1 million for one. 25,000 buses. 25,000 buses that will come into your communities, not just Orapun, because I speak now for all of Trinidad and Tobago. I know within the first year that PTSC was able to revive 44 buses, was it, that had been put out into the pasture, into the graveyard. 44 buses within 1 year.
Cindy Raghuba for 7 Eyewitness News.
As government gets set to debate the motion of censure against Attorney General Anna Ramlogan tomorrow, the leader of government business, Dr. Rudal Munilal, says they are not worried. According to Dr. Rudal Munilal, they expect the debate to conclude during one evening sitting.
It is the intention of the government to debate this motion in one day, because we believe that the motion is a very, very important motion. The Attorney General is a very important constitutional office holder, and we would not like this motion to hang over his head for weeks and months.
As you will remember, the motion was filed in Parliament by opposition leader Dr. Keith Rowley in what he described as an attempt to get answers on Ramlogan's involvement on the Section 34 fiasco. Reassurance from the government that they are working feverishly to assist the stranded Indonesian seamen. The men have been stranded in our shores for several months now, out at sea just off cruising Chagaramas. However, speaking during the post-cabinet briefing today, Mohammed said that Housing Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal is leading the charge to assist these men.
Minister Rudal Munilal is in discussion with our counterparts, some counterparts in Venezuela. It's really a humanitarian situation. If you understand, if you see the condition of the people who are on those boats, it's really a sad situation. And every effort is being made not only to make them as comfortable as possible, but to keep a healthy situation and to see how best we can alleviate that situation, that strain upon those individuals who are from Indonesia.
Meanwhile, all citizens could learn from the Islamic community, and this from Prime Minister Kamla Prasad Bisesa, as she paid tribute to Muslims as the Muslim community prepares to celebrate Eid al-Adha tomorrow. In a press release issued today, the Prime Minister says, like the Prophet Ibrahim, citizens can all learn the importance of standing up for what they believe in and having faith in the face of all adversity. Prasad Bisesa made special mention of those who will be amongst the millions of Muslims from around the world who are in Saudi Arabia as part of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. She said this is the largest single gathering of mankind in the world, and it is truly a spectacle to behold and witness. To this end, she says her government has pledged their continued support to facilitate those who wish to make that trip. In some other news now, the final clash of candidates vying for the different positions within the COP will take place tonight, and the candidates contesting for the seats of chairman and vice chairman will be subjected to questioning from members of the media, as well as those on the floor and their fellow candidates. And this third common platform will take place at the Hillview College in Tunapuna. And Win TV will provide a live broadcast of the event. Do tune into us at 7:30 p.m. for the start of all proceedings. It's time now for a short commercial break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is 7 Eyewitness News. A former SAIL financial director and managing director of Home Construction Limited says he cannot remember collecting $21 million. Anthony Fifi was on the witness stand today at the Commission of Inquiry into the collapse of SAIL Financial and the Hindu Credit Union. He was first cross-examined by attorney Terence Barath, who is representing the CLECO policyholders group. The commission heard that Fifi's company, PMI, was hired by SAIL Financial to manage HCL and in doing so pocketed millions of dollars. But when asked to recount the amount he got, Fifi said he did not recall.
The contract says $500,000 and a mobilization fee of 3.3. That's in 2005. And also here we have one invoice which we've discovered. Mr. Fifi, I'm talking about what you were paid in total for the year 2005. I know it's a long time ago, and I know it's a small amount of money for you.
But attorney Barath did not let Fifi off the hook so easily, forcing him to admit that he might have collected that amount.
At this stage, I cannot answer because I don't have the invoices in front of me.
Mr. Fifi, you know how much money we're talking about there? Do you have any clue about how much money we're talking about there? $21 million. You can't remember if your company received that in 2005,
We're not talking
Mr.
about,
Fifi?
we're talking about details. You're asking whether a particular thing was paid, and I'm asking, you refer me to page 43.
Mr. Fifi, you cannot recall in the year 2005 whether your company, PMI Limited, received a sum of in excess of $21 million in respect of the PMI contract. Are you telling this Commission of Inquiry that?
I cannot confirm that here.
SAIL Financial hired a company called PMI to run its Home Construction Limited company. But what was PMI's role since HCL hired its own employers and paid them salaries and wages? The Commission of Inquiry into the collapse of SAIL Financial and HCU heard that former HCL managing director was given the contract to run the company, and at that time, he was on the SAIL Financial board. Attorney Terence Barath questioned exactly what did PMI do.
It was all designed. It was all designed to create the impression that PMI was outsourcing all its labor and paying for all its labor to manage this multi-billion-dollar organization. When that never happened, isn't that so?
I don't think that was set up to fool anybody. Under the direction of PMI.
Under the direction of PMI, Mr. Fifi, you're digging one big hole for yourself.
Fifi then insisted that PMI ensured HCL was run efficiently.
Company PMI did not provide any skilled or unskilled labor, any managerial services or personnel to run the operations of HCL. Did you?
We
or
did.
Your company?
We did via HCL. It was merely a device to operate the company efficiently.
It was a device to fill your pockets with money, Mr. Fifi.
That's your opinion.
That is what it was.
Well, all's clear between Queen's Park and the WICB. Details in our sports cap. Stay with us. Welcome back to some sporting news now. President of Queen's Park, Bruce Ainson, has confirmed that negotiations have gone quite well with the West Indies Cricket Board, and they have accepted what has been put forward by the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board, and that's with regard to next day's Caribbean 2020 tournament at the Oval, being Trinidad's venue. The competition takes place from January 6th to the 20th. Ainson noted that there are no hard feelings over what happened last day, and the WICB has recognized that communication among the three organizations was not at its best. Meanwhile, the Queen's Park boss believes that the recent change in format of the competition will augur well for the regional side in the future. The WICB announced this week that there will be a preliminary non-elimination round with each team playing each other. The team topping the group will advance to the final, while there will be a playoff with the second place and third place teams vying for the next spot in the final. For some cricket news, the Ramnare Sarwan issue is a matter for Chairman of the West Indies Cricket Selectors, Clyde Butts, to address. And that's according to WICB President Julian Hunt, who said Sarwan's return was out of his control. In a press release at the Kensington Oval yesterday, Hunt disclosed that Sarwan has reached out to him with a desire to play for the Windies, but said Butts was charged with that particular responsibility. A veteran of 87 tests with a batting average of 40, the 32-year-old Sarwan last played for the West Indies over a year ago, and this after struggling in successive home series against Pakistan and India back in 2011. The coaching staff and selection panel then questioned his fitness, leading to Sarwan declaring he would not make himself available for selection. He then signed a contract with English county team Leicester. But the stylish right-hander has since recanted, writing both Hunt and Butts to say that his contractual obligations with Leicester wouldn't prevent him from returning to the regional side. And in some news of 2020 Champions League, Neil Mackenzie scored the runs while Chris Morris starred with the ball as the high-leveled Lions stormed into the Carbon Smart Champions League 2020 final, and they thumped the Delhi Daredevils by 22 runs in today's semi-final at the Kingsmead in Durban. On a bouncy pitch, Highveld Lions got a decent 139 for 5, which was par for the course, and then restricted Daredevils to only 117 for 9. Meanwhile, a rampaging Sydney Sixers would look to maintain their winning momentum and book a dearth in the final when they take on local side Titans in the second semi-final of the Champions League 2020 at Centurion Park tomorrow. Well, on that note, we've come to the end of tonight's newscast. I'm Samantha Rattan, wishing you a very safe and blessed night on behalf of all of us here at Open Communications.